For decades, the United Kingdom was defined by its geography. A European power, tethered to the continent, its security guaranteed by NATO. But in the wake of Brexit, a new audacious strategy emerged. It was a declaration that Britain would no longer look inward, but outward, to the fastest-growing, most volatile region on Earth. It is called the Indo-Pacific Tilt. This strategy is a deliberate, dramatic pivot away from the familiar battlegrounds of Europe, back to the waters where the British Empire once reigned supreme. It involves massive defense pacts, new trade agreements, and a direct challenge to the rising geopolitical power of China. But this pivot is not without its critics. They argue that the tilt is an act of strategic overreach, a nostalgic distraction that stretches the UK's military and diplomatic resources to the breaking point, all while the real threats, the war in Ukraine, the instability in the Middle East, lurk on its doorstep. The question is simple, yet profound. Is the Indo-Pacific tilt a masterstroke? A brilliant, necessary rebalancing of British power in the 21st century? Or is it a costly, dangerous distraction? To understand the tilt, we must first look back to the moment Britain last turned its back on the region. The East of Suez withdrawal in the late 1960s. That decision marked the final, symbolic end of the British Empire, cementing the UK's role as a regional European power. For 50 years, that remained the strategic reality. But two seismic events changed the calculus. The first was Brexit, which severed the UK's political and economic ties to the European Union, forcing a search for new global partners. The second was the undeniable rise of China, whose economic and military expansion fundamentally reshaped the global order. In 2021, the Conservative government published its integrated review of security, defense, development, and foreign policy. This document formally announced the tilt, declaring that the UK would become the European partner with the broadest, most integrated presence in the Indo-Pacific. The goals were clear: to deepen trade relationships, enhance security cooperation, and uphold the rules-based international system against authoritarian challenges. It was a declaration that Britain was back on the world stage, and its future lay in the East. This was more than just rhetoric. It was a conscious attempt to replace the lost economic and political weight of the European Union with a new global network of alliances. The debate over the tilt boils down to a fundamental conflict between ambition and capacity. The masterstroke argument is built on the idea of strategic necessity. Proponents argue that the Indo-Pacific is the engine of the 21st century economy, and the UK must be present to secure its long-term prosperity. Furthermore, they see the strategy as a vital contribution to global security, acting as a crucial counterbalance to China's growing assertiveness in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait. The distraction argument is rooted in resource reality. Critics, including the House of Commons Defence Committee, have argued that the UK is already under-resourced to meet its existing commitments to NATO and the Euro-Atlantic region. They warn that stretching the Royal Navy and diplomatic corps across the globe is a recipe for overextension, risking failure in both theaters. The question is whether the UK can truly afford to be a major player in two distinct, high-stakes geopolitical arenas simultaneously. Is the tilt a sign of a confident, newly independent global Britain? Or is it the last, desperate gasp of a former empire trying to punch above its weight? The tilt was not just a defense strategy. It was an economic one. The first tangible successes were in trade. The UK successfully concluded free trade agreements with Australia and New Zealand, and perhaps most significantly, secured agreement to join the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP, trade bloc. This gave the UK a direct trade link to 11 Pacific nations, representing 13% of global GDP. But the true geopolitical centerpiece of the tilt was the formation of AUKUS in September 2021. This trilateral defense and security partnership with the United States and Australia is a multi-decade commitment to help Australia acquire conventionally armed, nuclear-powered submarines. AUKUS is a clear signal of the UK's long-term commitment to the region's security. It is a technological and military pact designed to create a deep, integrated deterrent against China. It is the most significant defense agreement the UK has entered into since the end of the Cold War. AUKUS is the masterstroke's strongest evidence, but it is also a massive, multi-billion-pound bet on the future, one that ties the UK's destiny to the most volatile geopolitical flashpoint on the planet. The turning point in the debate came in 2023 when the House of Commons Defense Committee issued a scathing report. While the government claimed the tilt had been achieved, the committee flatly rejected the notion from a defense perspective. The core of the criticism was simple. The UK's strategic rhetoric did not align with its military reality. The committee argued that the UK's defense budget was insufficient to sustain a meaningful presence in the Indo-Pacific, while simultaneously meeting its commitments to NATO. The tilt, they argued, was a strategic distraction. The deployment of the carrier strike group was a temporary gesture, not a permanent rebalancing. Without a major commitment of cash, equipment and personnel, the UK would be forced to curb its ambitions, risking its credibility on the world stage. The war in Ukraine further complicated the picture. With Russia's aggression, the UK's security priorities were abruptly dragged back to the Euro-Atlantic. The Labour government, upon taking office, reinforced this reality, emphasising a NATO-first defence policy. The tilt, born of a desire for post-Brexit global relevance, now faces the brutal reality of a two-front world. A hot war in Europe and a cold war in the Pacific. The tilt has profound implications for global power dynamics. First, it is a clear statement of alignment with the United States. The UK is firmly positioning itself as the US's most reliable partner in the Pacific, a move that strengthens the Western alliance but further strains relations with Beijing. Second, it has caused friction with European allies. France, in particular, was furious over the AUKUS deal, which saw Australia cancel a multi-billion-dollar submarine contract with Paris in favor of the Anglo-American design. This created a diplomatic rift that underscored the UK's post-Brexit strategic independence. Third, the strategy is a direct challenge to China's narrative of regional dominance. By strengthening ties with Japan, South Korea and India, and by joining CPTPP, the UK is actively participating in the economic and security architecture designed to contain Beijing's influence. The UK's presence, though small compared to the US or China, acts as a crucial diplomatic and military force multiplier for the Western alliance. It is a symbol that the global rules-based order still has powerful defenders. The tilt is a high-stakes gamble. If it succeeds, the UK secures its economic future and its place as a global power. If it fails, it risks becoming a strategic liability, overextended and underdefended. The future of the Indo-Pacific tilt now rests on the ability of the current government to align its rhetoric with its resources. The Labour government has confirmed its commitment to AUKUS, recognizing the strategic importance of the pact. However, its NATO-first policy suggests a necessary prioritization of European security, meaning the tilt will likely be achieved through non-military instruments, diplomacy, trade and development, rather than massive naval deployments. The long-term success of the tilt will not be measured by the number of ships sent to the region, but by the depth of the relationships forged. Can the UK maintain its influence in the Pacific without sacrificing its security in the Atlantic? The UK's economic stake in the Indo-Pacific is undeniable. The region is critical for trade, investment, and supply chain resilience. The tilt is, therefore, a strategic imperative, but one that must be executed with surgical precision and clear-eyed realism. The story of the Indo-Pacific tilt is the story of modern Britain, a nation grappling with the ghosts of its past, the realities of its present, and the high-stakes gamble required to secure its future. So is the Indo-Pacific tilt a masterstroke or a distraction? The answer is that it is both. It is a masterstroke of diplomatic and economic strategy, securing vital trade links and forging the most important defense pact of the post-Cold War era. It is a necessary response to the shifting center of global power, but it is also a distraction, a dangerous overcommitment of military resources that risks undermining the UK's primary security role in Europe. It is a strategy born of ambition that has yet to be fully funded by reality. The tilt is not a destination, it is a continuous, high-wire act. The UK is attempting to be a global power once more, but this time, it must do so without the resources of an empire. The success of this gamble will determine not just the future of British foreign policy, but the shape of the global order for decades to come.